What metrics are you tracking in your farm marketing? So I'm learning Spanish on an app called Duolingo, and one of the things that it tracks is whether I show up every day and do a lesson. You guys, the only reason that I show up every day and do a lesson is because it's tracking it, and I don't want to lose my streak. Today, we're going to talk about the power of tracking your marketing metrics. I'm giving you a list of the things that I currently measure, so grab a pencil and paper, write this stuff down. Let's get started. Hey there, this is Corinna Bench, and welcome to the My Digital Farmer podcast. In today's market, it's not enough to just grow your product. You've got to know how to sell it too. Welcome to the My Digital Farmer podcast, where we reveal online marketing strategies and tips to help farmers like you get better and more confident at marketing. Learn how to find more customers, increase your sales, and build a strong brand for your farm. Let's start the show. Well, welcome to episode 227 of the My Digital Farmer podcast. I am your host, Corinna Bench, one of the farmers at Shared Legacy Farms, CSA, out in Elmore, Ohio. I'm also the founder of mydigitalfarmer.com, which is all about trying to help other farmers like you get more confident in your marketing and sales strategies so that you can grow a marketing system and build a profitable business. How's everyone doing today? Welcome back to the show. A big shout out to all of my regular listeners. This is the busy season, isn't it? Are you as crazy as I am? I am so grateful that I continue to be in your earbuds and that you think I have something important to say. And today's topic is going to be a really good one, something I've never really talked about on the show, surprisingly. And we're going to be chatting about marketing metrics, what some of the key things you should be measuring might be. And we're going to go through a pretty comprehensive list. But before we get started, if you're new to the podcast, I'm glad you're here today. Make sure that you just subscribe to my show. If you are really green when it comes to farm marketing, I encourage you to go back and listen to the first 10 episodes of the podcast. I designed them to be an onboarding ramp into the marketing space, or probably even better would be to get onto my email list, because I have like a crash course in marketing that I drip out to you over the course of 3 months once you subscribe. And you can get that by going to mydigitalfarmer.com/subscribe, and that'll start right away. Today's podcast is sponsored by my friends at LocalLine. So what's the difference between a generic e-commerce platform and something like LocalLine? Well, LocalLine is built specifically for farmers. That means that LocalLine has features that other e-commerce platforms don't have, like the ability to sell meat and other variable weighted products, custom delivery and pickup plans, inventory management by pack size, customer segmentation by price list, pre-configured pick and pack lists, low credit card processing rates, and more. In addition to all of these farmer-first features, LocalLine recently launched a service that connects farms with buyers, including restaurants and grocery stores. And they're about to release a subscriptions product. Our family farm here at Shared Legacy Farms has used LocalLine since 2020, and we love that LocalLine is constantly improving their platform. I'm not kidding. Every few weeks, they either upgrade an existing feature or they add a totally new feature to the platform to make it better. And their customer service rocks. I just had an issue come up a few weeks ago. Their developers got on it and they solved the bug in 2 days. For podcast listeners, LocalLine is now offering a free premium feature for 1 whole year when you sign up using my coupon code. Terms and conditions apply. So for more information, go to mydigitalfarmer.com/LocalLine and then type in my coupon code MDF2023. I'll also put the link in the show notes. And now back to the show. So do you guys can? I'm assuming that if you're a farmer, you probably do. And I am no different. I bet every 2 weeks I am canning something on the farm or freezing something. I'm doing a lot of freezer soup bags right now, actually. And this particular year, 2023, I have a huge to-do list of different types of things that I want to can and process because I didn't do as much last year, so it's now catching up with me. And I'm running into this problem where I didn't keep track of how many things I canned last year. Have you done that? Oh, it's so frustrating. I really need to just keep track of stuff in a canning journal and write down every year, this is how many quarts of tomatoes I made, because that would be so helpful when I get to the end of the year and I see how many I still have left. How many do I actually need to make? Because here I'm in this dilemma, getting ready to can tomatoes, and I just froze a bunch of corn, but I'm trying to figure out, well, how many quarts did I do last year that got me to where I am now? Because I just ran out. And so I kind of want to know what's that magic number. And I didn't write it down, did not keep the data. And so I'm having to fly blind a little bit. And I'm probably either going to not make enough or I'm going to make way too much. So I'm going to err on the side of caution and over process or make too many. But it's a perfect example of what I'm talking about today, which is keeping metrics. Keeping data in our business. So important. And you guys, I did not do this in my early years as a business. I mean, we did a little bit, but not to the extent we do now. I'm embarrassed to say that, especially because I teach marketing and sales. Maybe that's why I wasn't so good at first. It's so important to be keeping track of your metrics, because if you don't record the data as it's going along, you will lose track of it. You will forget. And then the next year when you need to make plans and you want to replicate at least what you did the year before, you don't have good data to look at to help you make decisions, or you don't know what's even going wrong in your business because you can't look at numbers and compare them to benchmarks. There is this quote out there by, I think it's Peter Drucker, who said, you can't improve what you don't measure. You can't improve what you don't measure. So we've got to be measuring stuff. And that is why I decided that today I would finally do an entire episode about some of the things that I wish I had measured, some of the data I wish I had been tracking earlier on in my business. And I have a pretty comprehensive list. I have a feeling this is going to be a popular episode that people come back to, and that you'll want to come back and listen to it again and write down all the things I'm saying. But I also want to be careful and just put out this caution to you that I'm going to go through a list, but this is sort of my list. Okay. These are things that fit my type of business. And I am a vegetable farm, primarily CSA, with online store sales to supplement. And we have wholesale income and a few restaurants. And we only run for 6-7 months of the year, and the rest of the year we're off. Okay. So that's how we do things, but you might have a totally different setup. You might have agritourism, which is a whole nother ball of wax. You might be doing meat. You might be doing goat's milk. I don't know. So you might be running a dairy. There might be different numbers. Okay. But I'm going to give you kind of a starting point, and I hope this will, especially if you're kind of beginner or intermediate, this might be helpful. I have a feeling that some of you are in my shoes like I was years ago, where maybe you're not tracking as much data. And the reason you might not be tracking the data is because either you just haven't set up the system, the Google Sheet, or you haven't set up a workflow time of the week or the month where you always do it, or you don't know what you should even be tracking. So that's why we're doing this particular topic today. And we're going to dive right in. I'm going to just talk you through some basic categories and some specific stats that I like to measure. Okay. Are you ready? So here we go. First of all, the most obvious one is sales data. So tracking your sales data is just crucial to understanding the overall performance of your business. The things that I track are my total revenue, obviously, but also my revenue per product category, and sometimes even by product. So there are some products like corn, for instance. Sweet corn is a huge driver of our sales. It's in our online store. It also shows up in our CSA. It's also showing up as a bulk sale. And I kind of want to know not only how much of my producing for my CSA, but like how much am I selling in the store retail, and when are those peak periods, and how much bulk corn did I actually do this year? Because it's going to help me next year to kind of plan, right? And to expect when can I expect those big income numbers to come in? So sometimes I'm very specific about like particular products that I know are primary sales drivers. But sometimes I'm just looking at the revenue for categories of sales. Like, oh, in general, my online store sales pulled in this much. So I know that like tomatoes, melons, my sweet corn, and some of my like peaches, which I buy in and resell, like some of those things are key drivers. And I do pay attention to what was the sales data for those different things. So total revenue, sometimes revenue per product or category, popular products especially. And then I also pay attention to when were those things really hot, because there might be an ideal season of the year when something really flies off the shelf. I'm also tracking the average transaction value, or this is sometimes called the AOV, the average order value, for my clients. This is something I do in my online store sales especially. I go in every week and I put this information into a Google Sheet. I want to know what is the average amount that a person is spending when they come to my online store and put stuff into their cart. And when I see that number slowly climbing over time, then I know that my income will continue to increase. That's one way you can generate more revenue for your business, is to get that number in general to go higher for everyone. I'm also curious, what are the total number of units sold for different types of products? Again, that's stuff that I get it from my e-commerce platform from Local Line. I'm looking at the number of orders in general, so how many store orders came in from week to week, and the number of customers that shopped in the store. I also keep track of the number of new customers that buy for the first time. So each of these things has a column in a spreadsheet, in a Google Sheet, and I go in every week. Sometimes it's every 2 weeks, but I like to try and do it every weekend before I open up the new version of the store, and I just track that data. It also keeps me looking at what were the numbers the week before and the week before that. So if I'm doing it on a weekly basis, this helps me keep my finger on the pulse of my business. It helps me see, am I doing kind of the same thing? Am I on track, or am I starting to see it climb, or is it like a huge drop? Do alarm bells need to start sounding? So that's why I have this practice of doing it every week. But that's kind of the stuff that I'm tracking when it comes to sales data. And one of the great things about having an online store platform like Local Line is that this is really easy to download a report from and just, stick it into your Google Sheet. So analyzing sales data and sales trends will help you identify peak periods when something's really popular. It will help you identify what the popular products even are, the things that are maybe driving people to come to the store in the first place and buy, and customer preferences. So if there's things that aren't moving at all, then we make decisions the next year like, we're not going to grow that because it's not selling. So that's kind of the whole first category, is just general sales data. Okay. All right. The next category is customer data or customer behavior. They're kind of the same thing. So I'm always monitoring certain kinds of behavior that's going to help me notice patterns and preferences from my customers. The first thing that I'm looking for are my top buyers. Okay, I have a list of clients, and this is something that Local Line actually lets me see every single week who are my top paying customers so far to date in their report. So who are the ones who are, I have sort of a top 10 list, but maybe you have like the $5,000 club or the $1,000 club. I don't know what scale you're at, but you should kind of know what is a big spender? How is that defined in your business? And who are the people that have achieved that status, or who are the people that continue to stay in that status from month to month and from year to year? This is such an important thing to know because you should be taking care of those clients. You should be doing special things for them. I give them little presents. I write them notes. I give them opportunities to get first dibs on things that are maybe limited and scarce. Sometimes when I'm going to preview a new product, I'll let them try it out first, and get their feedback, right? They know that they're special. They feel the specialness because I'm doing all these things for them. So who are your highest paying customers? I also think you should be tracking the customer value. So if you don't know what customer value is, this is basically the average, this is the amount of money that an average customer spends in 1 year. So every customer has a different customer value, right? But then there is an average. And you should know what that number is because you can, in theory, the next year bank on that. You can, if you're going to keep your systems and your processes and your sales and marketing kind of the same, you can say, well, this is the benchmark. This is what I did last year. And assuming most customers do the same thing they did last year, this is what I can expect to make. This is so incredibly helpful when you see numbers like this because you can map out a plan for the next year, like December, January, when we build our budget, and we feel, number one, we feel confident. We have this peace of mind and kind of security, like, oh, okay, looks like I'm going to be able to make it. I'm going to have enough by the end of the year, right? That cash, we'll also be able to see where the cash flow things are coming, where the cash flow issues are and where we're strong and heavy. But by doing this work, it also helps me identify where do I need to do some work in a promotion calendar, right? Where do I need to create offers? Where are the down periods where I'm not getting a lot of revenue and I need to create some buzz, or maybe I need to create a package, or I need to create some kind of promotion in one of those down periods. Okay, let's talk about social media. Here are some of the things you could be tracking. Likes, comments, views, shares of each of your posts. You could actually set up, again, a Google Sheet of some sort and have the individual post scheduled or, have it there ready to go. And then you could put down the metrics, like how did it do? And if you see some that do really, really well, you could sort of highlight it. And then maybe in a few weeks, maybe in like 8 weeks, you could even try repeating that post again, if it's still relevant. Or you could, next year when it comes back around, if you're kind of in that sort of a cycle, you can go back and look at some of those posts that performed really well because they've been highlighted. And you can say, oh, I'm going to do something very similar to that. Or I'm literally going to cut and paste it, copy it, put it on the platform again. Because a year later, people probably aren't going to remember that you posted that. Or many people don't even see that post, right? Because like, what is it? Like 3% of people organically see our social media. So just kind of keep that in mind. That is actually a really good strategy to be able to repurpose content. I don't do that. I'm just going to put that out there. And the reason I don't, I thought about it. I actually set up a whole sheet and got ready to do it, but it just wasn't working with my workflow. I just didn't have time to be doing that. And so I've just noticed that it's easy for me to come up with ideas. I post once a day on the 2 different channels, and I just feel like it's spinning the flywheel enough. It's creating enough buzz. I see in general that my numbers of likes and shares are kind of around this certain number. And I just kind of notice that visually, and I can kind of get a vibe of like, okay, I need to ramp it up or I need to ramp it down. So that for me is sort of how I'm tracking that. But I will say there's a couple of things that I do actually track on a Google Sheet with social media, and they are my email list growth. I've always said that the primary purpose of social media is to actually grow your email list. And so I do pay attention to the subscribe form. So in my email service provider, we go and we track and we see where did people come from when they subscribe to my email list. And we're looking to see how many people came from social media, from Facebook or from Instagram. So I do track that, and I can kind of see, well, is that really the thing that's driving the list growth, or is it primarily coming from, for instance, my website pop-up? And then conversions is something else that obviously you would want to try and get a handle on. Like from social media, is it actually driving sales? We don't pitch a lot of stuff on our social media. My goal primarily is to get people onto my email list. I guess that's the conversion I'm going for. But if you are trying to get people directly from social media to your online store or wherever the point of sale is, you could also be tracking that. One way to do that would be to create some kind of a coupon code that allows you, that only identifies with, your social media, so that when you see that coupon code come in, you're like, oh, that that sale must have come in because they saw something on Facebook. So there are ways to track that. It's a little bit trickier, I think, to track those conversions, but that's possible. Okay, let's move on to website analytics. I actually have a guest that's going to be coming on to talk about this stuff, and I can't wait. This is not something that I am super good at, but here are some of the things that I do take a look at. Website traffic, page views. I'm trying to figure out what are the popular pages on my website that people are visiting. And is that number staying the same, going down, going up? I just want to have kind of a sense of what the vibe is. The bounce rate is something I'm looking at. And if your store lives in a platform on your website, then the conversion rate is something you might be able to track as well. I can't see that from my website just because my online store is local line. So those are some of the things you might want to be looking at on your website analytics. Now, if you haven't heard, Google Analytics, the older version recently sunsetted, and now the new version just started. So hopefully you've made the switch over because they're no longer tracking the data from before. So just make sure that you have taken care of that if you haven't already. All right, here's my favorite one. Are you ready? Email marketing metrics. I'm the email girl, you guys. I'm super good at it and I love it, and it's what drives sales. So I am always in the numbers on this one. If you use email marketing at all, here are some of the key tracking metrics. Number one, you want to be looking at your open rates. And there is sort of an industry standard out there for agriculture, which is like 20%, 20 to 30%, which feels just so incredibly low to me. But that's kind of the industry standard. I feel like it's probably a better practice to use your own percentage as sort of a benchmark and then just try to get it higher. So my open rate for my farm list is about 71%, between 70 and 75%. It sort of fluctuates. And that is incredibly, incredibly healthy, like on fire good. Okay. So don't feel like that's what you need to be aiming for. But I do pay attention to the open rates. I want to just pause here and point out that the email open rate is an indicator of one thing and one thing alone. It doesn't mean that your email stinks, okay? What it means is that your subject line is either performing well or not performing well. So if you see a really low email open rate, consider trying to get better at writing better subject lines, because that is the job of the subject line, is to get a person to click and open the email. You might have fantastic content inside, but you didn't spend any time writing that subject line. And so a person decided not to open it. That's all that low open rate means. So just kind of think about that. The other metric to be measuring is your click-through rate. I like to kind of aim for 3% click-through rate. Something to think about here is if you don't have links to click in your email, you will have a 0% click-through rate. Okay, so always try to have something to click in your email. And one of the reasons we try to do this too is because we're training the click. We're training people to get used to clicking in your emails. Even if you're not pitching a product, even if you can't take them somewhere to buy, find something else that they could click on. Maybe you're going to take them to a resource to go watch a YouTube video of either on your channel or another influencer, someone else you want them to go watch. Maybe it's taking them to your social media page. Maybe it's taking them to a resource that you've made that lives somewhere, maybe on your website, a PDF guide. Just get them used to clicking something, okay? So click-through rates, conversion rates. This is, again, where I am trying to see how many people clicked on the link to the store, right? So I'll see what that number is. And then I'll go to my sales data worksheet. That's actually where I put this information as well. And I will say, oh, this is how much revenue came in from the store. And this is how many orders came in from the store. And I'll kind of compare the number of clicks in that email on the online store list email. I'll compare the number of clicks on the online store link in my email to the number of orders that I actually got in Local Line that particular week. And I can kind of see if they're close. And that helps me see, oh, this email is probably what drove that many conversions, right? So that's kind of how I get at that number. I'm also looking at the number of unsubscribes. I do keep track of that. This number is so low for me. I always have a few. Sometimes I have zero if from like the emails I sent to my CSA members. But for my online store email list, I always have at least one or two. Sometimes I have as many as 6 to 8. But I'm sending this to thousands of people. I think the list is 1,700 right now. So you should expect some unsubscribes. The only time you need to be alarmed is if this is really high in comparison to the number of people on your list. But I do track it. And then I'm also looking at my subscriber growth. The way that I do this is I have specific tags in my email service provider. I use ConvertKit. I have one called Purchase CSA 2023, for example. I have one that's Interest Online Store. I have one that's called Purchased Online Store. And I have one that's called Purchase Bulk Buyer. So I will go in and see how are those tags doing? And from week to week, I do track that. Has the number of Interest Online Store tags gone up a little bit? And if it has, that means that some people have subscribed to my lead magnets or subscribed to get onto my email list. And that's how I'm sort of tracking, I'm growing my email list by this number every single week. If I feel like that number is stagnating or it's not high enough, then that kind of triggers me and makes me think, Corinna, you need to do more marketing of your lead magnets, more content on your social media to try and get people onto your email list. And it'll kind of spur a little bit more attention to that in the next week. But as a general rule, I see that number kind of staying the same. There's always, a certain number every single week that are joining my email list, and I'm comfortable with what that number is. Now, if I didn't measure that, I would have no idea if my email list was growing. Here's what's really interesting. I didn't used to always track that particular statistic. And as a result, I noticed that I didn't really promote the lead magnet very often. I didn't promote my email list a ton on social. The moment I started tracking it, I began to be intentional about making sure that I talked about it on social media on a regular basis because I wanted to see the number go up, right? I wanted to make sure that I saw an impact. And there was a time fairly recently, last year when I wasn't really doing this and that number was not really going up much. And I'm like, Corinna, you got to be talking about this. So just be aware that when you start measuring things, it causes you to take action so that you can get the number that you want. It's very interesting. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. This is sort of interesting. I'm only bringing it up because I think it is kind of important. This is your competitors, I guess just an analysis of your competition. I don't write this down anywhere, but I'm keeping my eye on it. So I am monitoring the activity of my competitors in the marketplace. So I'm paying attention to what are their products that they're offering. What are their marketing campaigns? Are they doing anything kind of cool? What am I hearing about their brand in general? Like, are customers satisfied? And maybe also to like their pricing strategy. Like I do take a look at what are they charging for a CSA membership. I have a really good relationship with the other primary CSA in my area, but I do definitely respect them and like keep an eye on what they're doing because I want to make sure that we're in the same ballpark, right? And I just kind of I want to put that out there into the space. I don't write any of that stuff down, but I am kind of keeping my eye on the competition. Today's episode is sponsored by my small group coaching program for farmers called Accelerator. And I want to make you aware that the doors are opening for enrollment for a new cohort in early September. And if you want to join that wait list, you can go to mydigitalfarmer.com/coaching to learn more about it. Now, I take a group of 20 farmers through a 3-month experience where I basically help them build the different marketing systems in their business piece by piece. Every month, we get together and we focus on one marketing project. It might be building a lead magnet. It might be building our email nurture sequence. It might be auditing our sales funnel. And each month I have a training on it for the first week. I give you a resource drop with all kinds of starter resources so you can get going on your own project and customize it. And then on the third week, we have a group coaching session where we have people sitting in the hot seat and they share their work and we all give feedback on it. And then the final week is when we have our mastermind, where the group comes together and we either have someone share something that they're doing really well to teach the rest of the group, or we bring our questions and our concerns to the team and we kind of crowdsource ideas. If you're interested in joining the next cohort, head to mydigitalfarmer.com/coaching to read up on all the details and to sign up for the waitlist. And we can schedule a one-to-one call to talk things out and see if you're a good fit. Head to mydigitalfarmer.com/coaching. And now back to the show. All right, let's talk about lead generation. This is a critical aspect of sales and marketing as it involves identifying, nurturing potential customers. And so I really think you have to have some kind of metric system around this one. Lead quantity. So I already kind of mentioned this, but this is the metric that's measuring the total number of leads that have been generated within a specific time frame. So I measure this every week, but you might decide you only want to measure it once a month, or maybe you only want to measure it during a special marketing promotion where you're trying to get people on your email list. Maybe you're doing an email list blitz, like an email list building blitz, and you want to see how effective was that. So lead quantity, lead quality. Now, I don't actually do this, but I wrote this down because I think some of you might want to be measuring lead quality. So this is like assessing factors like, where did the lead come from, the lead source? And what about their demographics? And are they in an income bracket where they could even afford my stuff, right? What is their engagement level? What content have they already consumed? How far along in the journey are they already? Are they, warm enough? Are they still kind of cold? Are they hot? Are they ready to buy because they have all the information they need? So there's a whole bunch of lead scoring that you could be going down here with some of your clients. I'm thinking about some of you who have do bulk buys, for instance. If you're bulk meat buys, like a side of beef or whatever, this might be something helpful to measure if you can keep track of specific customers and be like, okay, how ready are they really? And what's the quality of this lead? Is this something I should follow up with now, or do I need to kind of wait? Another metric under lead generation would be the conversion rate. And so the conversion rate measures the percentage. I'm going to actually give you the formula here. It's the measure of the percentage of leads that ultimately become paying customers. So this is calculated by dividing the number of conversions, the number of people that bought, right, by the total number of your leads. So a higher conversion rate would indicate that you're much more effective at nurturing those leads, at targeting them, and maybe even your process of selling. So I have noticed that some of my sales processes have higher conversion rates than others. And this is just by practicing a bunch of different types of offers, a bunch of different ways of trying to pitch an offer, you kind of realize, when I talk with someone one-on-one, I have an 80% close rate, in comparison to another strategy. You might discover that and be like, well, maybe it's worth it to spend the time to get on the phone and talk to people one-on-one. So that's just something to be aware of. What is that actual conversion rate? Your cost per lead. Oh, this is a really important one. Your cost per lead. I'm actually trying to figure this out right now for Digital Farmer because I've never really tracked this. I continue to get people on my email list for Digital Farmer, but I'm sort of curious, like, if I ran ads, like to try and get people onto my email list, like what would it cost to acquire a new really good farmer lead? This metric calculates the average cost of generating a single lead. And so this will help you assess the efficiency and the cost effectiveness of some of your lead gen strategies, or if you have a campaign that you're running on social media to try and get people on your email list, like it's going to help you know how effective is it. Are you paying $5 for an email lead? Are you paying $10? Are you paying $25? What table are you playing at? And lowering the cost per lead while maintaining a really good lead quality is obviously what you're trying to do. The big question here that I want you to kind of stew on is, how much are you willing to pay to acquire a lead, a really good lead, who will hopefully eventually turn into a customer? And I see a lot of resistance. I see it in myself too, you guys, but I see a lot of resistance to spending money to acquire a lead because we don't like spending money on advertising like that. But if those customers actually do end up becoming paying customers, and you have a process in place to funnel those customers into once they get on your email list, so that a certain percentage of them do convert, then the numbers will tell you that it's totally worth it. I did a whole episode on 100 True Fans, and this idea of trying to get a fan to spend, a customer to spend $1,000 a year with you. If you can get 100 people to spend $1,000 a year with you, that's $100,000. And we sort of walked through some examples in that episode of how a person could get to $1,000 in 12 months. And it's very easy, I think, to make that happen. And what if that customer doesn't just stick around for 1 year? What if they do that same buying behavior the next year and the year after that? In fact, what if they spend more as they stay with you? Suddenly, that customer has a lifetime customer value of $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. And I'm getting all upset about the fact that I have to spend $5 to $10 to acquire them as a lead on the front end. It just sort of puts things in perspective. So when you are measuring your data and you've got these metrics, wow, my conversion rate, when they get on my email list, 60% of them turn into a buyer within 3 months. Like, when you know that sort of information, and you know that your average customer eventually spends $800 to $1,000 a year with you, right? You start doing numbers and you realize, well, I can spend up to this much to acquire a lead. And you get real comfortable with that. So that's why I want to just challenge you to start just playing around with some of these numbers. Just start tracking them. Just start tracking them. Don't even try to manipulate them yet or analyze them. Just start tracking them. And then you can be making decisions later when you start to see the patterns. Okay, a couple more things I want to talk about here with lead gen is the lead to customer time. And this metric is measuring the average time it takes for a lead to actually convert into a paying customer. I don't have accurate data on this myself for a CSA member, but I have a general feeling that it's maybe like 6 to 12 months is the lead time for a person to turn into a CSA customer. Because it's a higher ticket product, people need some time to think about it. They need to try out some of my other products in my online store and see if they like my stuff. They need to go through my email nurture sequence. They need to see pictures. They need to think about it. They need to talk about it with their partner. They just need to really give some thought to it before they're ready to say yes. And frankly, I'm not always open, right? So I feel like for something like a CSA, that lead to customer time is a whole lot longer. When you know that that's kind of normal, then you can build your promotions and your sales campaigns around that, right? You don't freak out and you're like, oh, what's going on? Like, if I just sit here right now, I'm going to tell you right now, getting someone to become a CSA member in the traditional style where you ask them to pay up front and put out a big outlay of capital all on the front end, like, that's a harder sell, and you should expect a longer lead to sales time, like several months, maybe a year, to warm someone up to that. If you're more of a client, if your stuff is more like week to week and the average order value is like $20 to $50, like, that's a whole lot easier. There's a lot less risk there. And, your lead to customer time is going to be a whole lot shorter. So knowing this number is going to help you identify the bottlenecks or the delays in your sales process. And then you can optimize your sales funnel. You can kind of figure out, what do I need to fix to move people through more quickly? Okay, and then lead source performance. That's kind of a fancy, I don't know what to call that. Lead source performance. So this is where you're tracking the performance of your different lead sources. And this is going to help you know, which marketing channels are driving the most qualified leads into my business. Where are they all coming from? Are they coming from Google, right? Is SEO helping me? Are they coming from Facebook and social media? Are my sales coming from my emails? Someone got onto my email list, and most of the time my sales come because of that weekly email that I sent out. Wow, you guys, this is super powerful, and I want to challenge you to kind of figure this out, because it's going to help you know where you need to spend more of your time with your marketing. If you're trying to get people on your email list and your data in Google Analytics is telling you, or even in your email service provider will tell you, you can click and look at the reports for different forms, subscribe forms, and see where are the leads coming from. And if it's telling you that it's coming primarily from, Google as opposed to social media, that's going to tell you, maybe I don't need to spend so much time on social media like I am. Maybe I need to invest more in SEO, right? So just knowing, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you're crushing it and it's all coming from Facebook. And then that would validate you and say, yeah, keep spending the time you're spending on social media, because that's what's working. That's what's driving new people into your funnel. Okay, and the very last thing I'm going to bring up, this is going to be short and sweet, is Google reviews. I measure my Google reviews. I don't measure if it's 4-star or 5-star. What I measure is, did I get one? Because most of mine are 4 and 5 stars. How many new Google reviews did I get that month? And I've got to be honest, I haven't gotten a lot of new ones. And the reason why is because I haven't created any intentional strategies to cause people to go and leave me one. So I do have periodic times in my promotion calendar of the year where I have a push to grow my Google reviews, because this helps with your performance on SEO. Google will show your listing over someone else's if you have way more reviews than they do. So this is a really fast way to drive your listing to the top of the page. So I have special promotion periods where the goal is I want to drive reviews on my Google reviews page. I have a little postcard that I send out to my CSA members. I do that once, sometimes twice a season. I haven't done it yet. And they're waiting. They're just sitting there in a big stack looking at me, and I'm waiting to have a really good week, strong week, and then I'm going to put that in the box and ask them to send me a review. I also have another kind of pitch where I do that later on in the year, and I have a fun little campaign around it. And that's kind of when I see it happen. But if you're not measuring them, you have no idea where you even stand, right? And we want to see those consistently climbing from month to month. All right. Now, before I wrap up, that was a lot to keep track of, right? I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh my God, that's 30 things. No, it's not that many. It might be 20 though. I want to just put this out here. I hope you go back and just write them all down. Just make a quick list. And I want you to tackle the things that feel easy to do, and also tackle the things that you feel like are the most valuable for you to know. You might be sitting there thinking, I don't really care how many new people are getting onto my email list. I'm not really interested in tracking that right now. Fine. I'm going to push back and say, I think you should pay attention to that someday, because that is important. But if that's not the most important thing right now and you only have a little bit of time, pick the things that you think will drive your revenue, drive your profits. At the very least, I think you should be tracking, your sales data, your total revenue. Try to figure out, your average customer value in 1 year. You're going to have so much peace of mind when you know what that number is. And I also think is the number of customers going up, right? Is the number of orders going up or staying the same? Just like, where am I at there? But the biggest driver for me has been that Google sheet that I talked about, where I'm keeping track of what's selling in the store, how much am I making every week, am I hitting my revenue goals, right? And what is is email? What is email doing for me? Is it coming from my email, my weekly email? You guys, most of that sales stuff is coming from my weekly email. And when I see that, it tells me, Corinna, of all the things you're doing every week in marketing for your farm, you've got to do the weekly email. Like, you've got to do it because the data is telling you that that's where it's all coming from. So if I have to drop off a few things, if I can't make it to social media, I don't freak out so much because I know that hour that I spend every week to write a really good weekly email is paying off. It's paying the bills. So take all of these data points and, sift through them, let it just sort of wash over you. But ultimately, I want you to just figure out, what are the things I really need? Like for my business, what do I really need? This might all be super fun to track, but if you're not going to do anything with it, then don't waste your time tracking it right now. My call to action for you from this episode is to build some kind of a Google sheet and put some columns in place and figure out what are the 3, 4, 5, 6 things that I want to track, and put them into that Google sheet and build it. Then create a specific time. It could be every week, it could be every other week, or you could decide it's every month. But create a specific time and block it off on your calendar when you will go and actually put the data into that Google sheet. Just start the process of tracking the metric. And maybe in like 3 or 4 months, go back and start looking at the patterns because you'll start to see them. It's really cool. All right, that's all I got for you today. Your show notes can be found at mydigitalfarmer.com/227. If you liked today's episode, I would love it if you would leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. Just head over there, scroll down to the bottom of the episodes, and there's a section there. It says leave a review, and you can give me 5 stars or whatever you'd like to give me, and write a few comments out. What's been most helpful? I am trying to get the word out about this show, and having more reviews helps that happen. Now, don't forget, if you want to get onto my email list, I have a lot more farm marketing tips to share with you. I have that crash course that I'm going to walk you through. If you subscribe, go to mydigitalfarmer.com/subscribe. And don't forget, I am now on Instagram. I show up mostly inside of Instagram stories at mydigitalfarmer. And I'd love to hang out with you there and share some wisdom, hear from you. You can send me a message. Tell me what you think about the show. Thanks for joining me today. You guys have an awesome week. Go take some data metrics, and I'll get back to you next week. Bye-bye.